Hello everyone, my name is Jody, and today I'll be presenting Milgram's study of obedience. My dog is very confused as to why I'm talking to myself. Ignore her. So by the end of this presentation, you should have a better idea of the reason of the study, what was being tested, as in like the method and results, and the importance of the results to modern psychology. So the reason of the study, for those of you who don't know about the study, it was the conflict between obedience to authority and personal conscience. So Milgram decided to do this study because he was interested in the Nazi killings in World War II. He wanted to see if the reasoning behind the Germans committing this heinous act was due to an obedience to authority. So the objective of the study was to see just how far people will go when obeying an instruction from authority, to the extent of harming people and even killing people. So the procedure was that the experimenters told the subjects that were they were taking part in scientific research to improve memory. So each pair of volunteers had a teacher and a learner. So the learner was just a Confederate, so he was essentially an actor. And so the teacher would test the learner with a list of word pairs, and every time the learner got an answer wrong, the teacher would administer a shock, and the shocks increased in voltage every time the learner got an answer wrong. The shocks varied from 15 volts, which was a slight shock, to 375 volts, which was considered danger, severe shock, to 450 volts, which was labeled XXX, as in death. So let me show you this video really quick that will further demonstrate the experiment. So basically what you'll see is the teacher giving the learner a list of words, and then the learner purposely getting the wrong answer, and the teacher having to administer shocks.
Cloud, horse, rock, house. Answer. Wrong. 150 volts. Answer, horse.
Experiment. That's all. Get me out of here. Get me out of here, please.
Continue, please. Go right ahead.
I refuse to go on. Let me out.
The experiment requires you continue, teacher. Please continue.
Participants didn't know that the learner was really an actor, and the so-called shocks harmless.
You're going to get a shock. 180 volts.
I can't stand the pain. Let me out of here.
Stand it. I'm not going to kill that man there. I mean, who's going to take the responsibility if anything happens to that gentleman? I'm responsible for anything that happens here. Continue, please. All right, next with slow. Walk, dance, truck, music.
Two-thirds.
Okay, let me try to get back to this. 1 second. Okay, so as you can see in the video, the teacher becomes increasingly resistant to giving the learner shocks because of the learner's responses of being in pain. But the experimenter would give orders to ensure that the teacher continues, such as, please continue, the experiment requires you to continue, and you have no other choice but to continue. So the results showed that of the 40 subjects, 26 obeyed the orders till the very end, which was giving 450 volts, which was the XXX voltage, meaning death. However, all of the subjects went to 300 volts, which was just below the severe shock danger voltage. But even though they all went to 300, they did so under extreme stress and fear. For example, Milgram was talking about, or he was explaining a subject who came in to the experiment. He was a businessman. He was all smiles whenever he walked in. He was really confident. But within a few minutes of the experiment, he was under extreme stress, and he was very fidgety. He was very stressed out, and he was stuttering a lot. So he Sorry, she's very distracting. So he was very stressed out that Milgram thought he was going to pass out from like a nervous breakdown. So essentially the results showed that ordinary people are likely to follow orders by authority figure, even to the extent of killing. And Milgram explained that he thinks this is because from an early age, it's ingrained into our head to obey authorities, such as like in school, in the workplace, and even with our own family. So the importance of the results is why seemingly good people do bad things when under pressure. And it just shows affirmation to one of the main principles of social psychology, meaning it's not the kind of person that we are that defines what we do in certain situations, but rather it is the kind of situation we find ourselves in that defines our behavior. Also, the results allowed for other studies to replicate Milgram's findings, such as, and it like defines constant social behavior, such as a experiment that was done this year, 2019, called I Would Never Fall for That, and it involved undergraduate students and Confederates, which were, again, like actors. So the teachers of these classes were told to arrive 5 to 10 minutes late to their class, and the Confederates were two people. They were older, informally dressed, and they walked into the classroom and just stood at the very front of the class showing their authority. And without explanation, they just went down the rows to every student. Charlie! They went down the rows to every student and collected their phones just to see like as many phones as they could possible. And out of 5 classes, 85% of students gave away their phone to a stranger. And we all know that our phone is our most personal, valuable item that we own. So this just shows the willingness to accept illegitimate authority due to an ingrained idea in our head that we need to obey like authority figures. There was another study done shortly after the Milgram study, and it was called The Effects of Potential Self-Inflicted Harm on Obedience to an Authority Figure. So the Milgram study was seeing if like a third-party person would potentially harm, or an individual would potentially harm a third-party person due to an authority figure telling them to. But this study was interested in if a person would inflict harm on themselves due to an authority figure telling them to. So it involved 17 undergraduate students who were taken to a laboratory, and there was a cabinet in the laboratory with 3 signs on it that said danger, keep out, and do not open. So the experimenter told the subjects to complete a mock personality inventory and that she'd be back in a few minutes. So whenever she did come back, she told the students that she was late to a meeting with the dean and that she'd be back in a little bit, but to wait in the cabinet for her. So the results were very different to Milgram's results because 4 students obeyed and 13 disobeyed. So this is interesting because it shows that the subjects were unlikely to obey if the authorities' request places subjects in danger, but if the request is done, if it places a third-party person in danger, they're fine with that as long as they themselves are going to be safe. So why it's important is because obedience continues to be relevant, and there's so many aspects of it that can still be studied today, and that these studies have proven to show all the different aspects that there is. So thank you for listening to my presentation. I hope you learned something new, and y'all have a great day.